have one picture of a little science experiment you sent me a while back, and I don't know if that's something I could show the community or not. And like I said, I don't want to overstep your bounds. Let me show you what I found here, and I don't know how I found this. Or when you sent it to me. I can't remember when, but I guess when you were working with the company to help you build your 4 identical coils. But I've got this right here.
Yeah, that's me feeding 4 DC discharges into the one. I've got a really bad video of it actually in operation. The problem I had was easy to see with your eye, wonderful natural thing that it is, very hard to film with a mobile phone camera. If I can find it, I'll it was rough.
Are you talking about that? That's a still shot.
That's a still shot. That was very early days, me feeding 1 DC back through itself. And that's basically a spark plug from Tesla's design. And this is me just improving on it, saying what we need to do is bring longitudinal forces together to do this, to matter, think of it as an aluminium can. How do we turn the aluminium can back into something useful? We crush it, we flatten it, we peel it open, we warm it up, then we recast it as something useful. I took the 1 DC discharge that came into 4 points, then I went, no, we need 4 hammers coming together. So I built that. I've built a couple other designs since then. I've gone back to massive capacitor banks, about 300,000 volts, spewing back into them all that way. My next one is sort of a lazy approach to everything, and I think it's probably the approach that the advanced life forms are looking for. I'm going to jam their radio signals because, like I hint at in my cosmology book, the way to communicate isn't with transverse waves. That's like banging 2 rocks together or waving 2 rocks at each other, a semaphore. Not very interesting to intelligent life forms. What they're waiting for is a species to go, this is how nature works, we should use that. And that's where Tesla was heading. He abandoned AC, went to DC because he said, I can transmit a lot of power, lights these light bulbs, and I can transmit real power at a distance with no lag. How do I do that? I created this field. He had a wrong interpretation of how it works. He viewed it as pumping up the earth, filling it with energy, and that energy would leak out, and you could tap it. What you're actually doing is sending out the same pulses that the sun sends out constantly. Since the sun was first burst to life, 3.5 minutes later, the earth in its orbit was impacted by those beams and has been steadily impacted by those beams. That's kept the earth in a stable orbit and all the planets. That's longitudinal force acting. If you think of that beam between the earth and the sun and extend it out for another 4 billion years, whatever, 200 billion years, that's so those same beams, which can be likened to your ball of string, have reached out to all the stars in the galaxy, in our galaxy, Milky Way. All the other stars are then spreading the same beams back towards us. So they formed a giant telecommunications network, and they all work on longitudinal waves. So the moon's a reflector. You can bounce signals back off the moon and all the rest, but if you're not bouncing the right ones, if you're just oscillating energy, you're not doing anything to that network. It's not interfering with it. It can be used for sending information, receiving information, probably video, way more advanced than us. But at the end of the day, it's just a communications network. Now, if you're an alien that's stuck on this planet and you want to get off fast, just like the Titanic, what do? You send up a flare. If you're in wartime Germany and you want to create disruption and disable the Nazis, what do? You put out a spark gap transmitter in the middle of the forest and you jam their radio signals, because longitudinal spark gap transmitters create a broad spectrum of energy, just like the sun is broad spectrum light. X-rays the whole lot because of its intensity. So if you're stuck on a planet that's primitive, you don't need to reinvent the warp engine. You don't need to make a new style or a matter energy converter. If you want to get off fast before you're discovered or starved, or you're totally different to the humans that you're amongst, you just create a transmitter. It doesn't have to be a good transmitter. It just has to make a lot of noise and interfere with the natural signals that are out there. Once you start jamming up the telecommunications network, the local tech's going to come out and have a look, find out what's jamming up all these radio signals. And that's what I suspect will happen. So my next step is, and this device has been on the planet before. It was previously called, well, most famously called the Ark of the Covenant. It's just a DC transmitter arcing out between the two cherubim, which was the seat of God on earth. It was an RF generator, creates a broad RF signal that he can then transmit into. So he can use it for communications. He can use it to track people wandering anywhere on the earth, including deserts, because there's no other RF signals at the time. So it was very convenient, and it may well have been stolen from the Egyptians, because the Cyrus vessel, or that's got a different name, the Cyrus Ark or whatever, is very similar in design to the Ark of the Covenant. So either the Hebrews took it when they left Egypt, hence why suddenly making sense why the Egyptians would follow them to their death into the Red Sea, or they built a new one at the foot of Mount Sinai. Either way, the simplest way, if you want to connect and restart civilization or advance civilization according to Old Testament revelation, is to build one of these devices, recreate the Ark of the Covenant, show that you've got some technology or technological understanding, and they'll come back and go, okay, you want to be members of the International Society, Interstellar Society? These are the rules we apply by. You're now one race because you're all humans. Doesn't matter color, skin, whatever, that's it. You're all one race. Get over your petty differences, treat it as one planet that you live on, and we'll supply you some new wonderful technologies that you've already glimpsed in your understanding of tetronics, but we'll supply the working devices, and we'll give you a lot of, like I said, 1,000 years of peace, because all our needs will be met. What happens after that happens after that. No doubt human greed will rise again. So instead of trying to make the matter energy converter, which involves a lot of shielding and a lot of design and making sure I don't cook myself in the process, I figure the easiest way is to set up a wideband broadcast transmitter, for lack of a better word, and just leave it running for longer than probably a couple of days. You've got 9 minutes to get to the sun, and anything after that, as long as it continues to run, will create a steady, it's got to run steadily, a steady signal, because every welder out there in the world is a DC discharge. So they're going on and off as they're welding stuff. You need a constant signal, or at least put a pattern into the signal that people can say that's not random, that's somebody deliberately sending a signal. Send that through, and then that'll kickstart everything else off. So from there, there'll be a huge jump start. And it saves, lazy me says, it saves me building a lot of devices, spending a lot of money and a lot of time doing it, and possibly dying in the process. But that's the 4 that I had running. I've got a video. If I can find it, I'll send it to you. I'll email it or message it to you. Because I do have one where it worked, but you'll see it when it's operating. It's off center, but when it was operating, you'll see this moment where, as the speed varied, funny enough, it wasn't a high speed that was required to get the most output. You got to a high speed, and then I'd slow it back down, and suddenly everything would get brighter. As it's getting brighter, what's actually happening in the test tube was 6 little stars formed and started to pinwheel around each other. A bit like those pictures you see of the Earth if viewed moving along with the sun. They started doing that, and the 6 of them were really bright, really steady for about 20, 30 seconds. But I'm constantly, you'll hear the noises, it's constantly trying to spin up. I'm trying to slow it down, it's wobbling and all the rest. So it wasn't the best design, but I'll find the video and I'll send it to you. That's what that was doing in the dark. My partner and her daughter all got to see it, along with myself, inside the shed, running away, and it was just mind-blowing. You had these 6 little stars in the test tube, about 2 inches test tube, and 6 little stars just sitting in there. It was just amazing to see. And it reminded me a lot of Eric Dollard's description of what he used to do as a kid. Throw all the AC power, all the DC, the power that he could get out of the switchboard at home into these old dead light bulbs. And it would create these mini galaxies that lasted for a few seconds and just faded away. That's basically what I describe when I say it's not a big bang, it's a big discharge. You're throwing energy into a region of space and you're letting that energy do its stuff. It'll create matter, it'll create conditions for that matter to then radiate and collapse on itself, and these little stars will form. So I'll dig it up. I've got it here somewhere. I keep filing so much away. The drive's full of the stuff.
Well, I mean, is this anything that you're going to publish to your channel, or are you going to let me do it?
Actually, I can see the thumbnail here. Hang on. If that's it, I'll send it to you now. There it is.
So are we going to do email or just a...
Can I send it in here to you?
You
Is there a way to just attach in Zoom?
in Zoom? Oh, like a chat.
Yeah, like a chat drop for attachment.
All right.
Full screen.
We will see. I've got that chat window up. Yeah, I would love to see that. I mean, and like I said, I'm not trying to share anything unless you give me permission. However, I am really
I'm
trying.
using Skype, so in Skype I just share my screen, my second screen, and you'd see it up and running.
You can do a share screen. Should give you options to pick a monitor.
There we go.
And let me get you set up as full screen. There we go.
You got that one?
Yeah, I can see it.
Okay, I'll rewind him.
Hold on. I want to get some. Let's see here. Okay.
I will send you the video.
Oh, that's awesome. Thank you so much.
30 seconds. 30 seconds. This is about, no, it's probably 10 years ago. No, it wouldn't be that long. It's probably 5-7 years ago. This is probably back around the time of our last meeting. You can see the 4 coils. You can see how it's getting brighter. There you go. All the stars will be up there. You can't see it because it's saturated from the light coming out of them. But there's actually 6 stars sitting in there quite happily. You can see the DC discharges in around there. But all I'm doing is arcing out from the Tesla coil that you've got there into the hardest thing I had to figure out was you have to focus these DC discharges together. And how do you do that? Normally you just send it down the spokes of a wheel, say, as it spins, and that's basically the design there. But you don't want the wheels touching, the spokes touching. So you've got to build a wheel without an axle. Because in the center of the axle where you want all the action happening. In my case, I've got a test tube of, there's probably krypton or xenon. I had a whole range of gases I was playing around at the time. It looks like more like xenon or something. Might have been helium. Pick the color and then you'll match it with the test tube neon lights and you'll know what gas it was. I set it up, fired it up, had to mount the gas in the middle because burning oxygen doesn't do much. It just arcs out, and it tends to arc out from one electrode sideways across to the other one. So you need the gas in the middle to make a conductive or a low resistance path for it to want to go to the middle. When it does that, then bingo, you get this gas lighting up. And first thing it does is it starts to light up, but then it breaks up into these little stars. And it worked quite well, but then I shifted from where I was to here. And in the process, the Tesla coils got damaged, so I had to order new ones. Ordered the new ones, then I had to redesign the hub so I could put aluminium that's got steel spokes in it. I got one with aluminium, so I could put more spokes or take spokes out, change, because the spokes change. The more spokes and the faster it rotates increases the frequency that it hits. So you can, by adjusting the number of spokes and the rotational speed, you can then find that sweet spot again where you got the most glow and try and keep it stable. Centering was always a problem. So that's where I got to. And then the next stage that I did was encase the entire device in a vacuum so that the arcs that start off at the beginning don't appear. They just jump straight across to the device. You don't have that, because what happened there was as it rotated, because the spokes or the blades were just off flush with the surface of the hub, even when they were flush with the aluminium ones, as it rotates, it creates a wind, obviously, because it's spinning. So then that wind does exactly what Tesla was discovering, and that is the same as blowing out the candle. It deviates the arc, so you're losing power from the arc going into it. So there's a lot of little things in the design of a matter to energy converter that need to be taken into account. That's just converting electrical energy and crushing, bringing it together to crush any helium that's in its path. And when it does, it creates the stars, because they split apart, the tetraons break out into light, and that's what's creating that intense glow that you see build up at just the right spot.
Are you able to play back speed, like play it back at half speed? Is there an option there? I don't know if you have that.
Some not on this one.
Yeah, I
Some
was just curious.
videos do. I think Vimix and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, I was just curious. But yeah, that's beautiful. It's absolutely beautiful.
Yeah, as a device works, you can just scroll back. You can see the arcs coming in.
Yeah, I see that. I'm trying to wrap my head around
no arcs, and that's it, just glowing without the arcs.
Mm-hmm.
But an impact, lighting up. There's the start of the orange. So that's the start of your lights. Stars, I should say. Here they come. Where to the naked eye, when the stars form, you get this glow, this orange glow, which just becomes white light in this video, unfortunately. And that was part of what was happening with this other group. We were going to get much better cameras, high-speed cameras, and much better aperture cameras to capture a good picture of exactly what was happening in the center there. And never came about. So there was 2 years mucking around, getting that done, explaining things to people without revealing too much, to the point where I know I had a working device. I know I could refine it, and we could get it working way, way better than what we were. And I actually even went, so you go, there's a huge jump just from there to there, just poof, and then just keeps going. But the big problem was maintaining it. And then I had to, that was just a bit like the ignition on the starter motor. That's just converting matter back into raw energy spasmodically, like an old putt-putt engine, one-cylinder diesel. Not very efficient, but proof of concept. And from there, we would have refined it and gone on. So I've started that. I've gone through 6 Tesla coils, because they're finicky things. They short out very quickly. They love to short out. The laminated windings, any damage to them just causes problems. Tuning them, it's one thing to order them. It's another thing you've then got to sit down and make sure, for the purposes of the experiment, that they're all putting out the same voltage at the same frequency. Once they're all tuned, then you can use them. Otherwise, it's a bit like going fire, no misfire, fire, no misfire, and nothing's quite working right. So you get varied results. So you've got to get them all tuned just right. The rotation affects it. The gap, spark gap has to be the same. All these engineering things have to go into getting it right. And I just haven't had the time to commit back to it, because we bought the house and then I started renovating the house. So, and then went back to work to pay for everything. So I've been absorbed with working, coming back, doing weekend stuff, recharging myself, and then going back to work again. hence why I got to the point where I thought I'll take a shortcut. Well, what's an easier way? I mean, like I'm trying to. It's like building a warp core. What's if I was Geordie LaForge and I was stuck on a planet that I was crashed on? Would I try and rebuild the shuttle's engines out of everything that was there? No, I'd just send a radio signal, come and help me. I'm stuck. We'll destroy the ship if necessary, and we'll get off the planet. And that's my approach now. It's simpler to build a Ark of the Covenant, for lack of a better word, or an arc reactor, and just let it run, and just either put a pattern into it. Same thing here. I figured just a spoked wheel with the patterns of primes: 1 spoke, 3 spokes, 5, 7, 11 spokes. So there's a prime pattern, and let it repeat as it revolves around. It'll go back to say 13, then go back to 1. Just repeat the prime numbers over and over. It'll do it all by itself. Sit there, leave it running, and see what happens. It's a quick, dirty way of saying, hey, I want your attention.
Yeah, you're saying broadcast the prime number pattern using the, yeah, I got you.
Just a wheel, yeah. Simple solution, and it's probably what they're looking for anyway. They're probably looking for someone that goes, okay, I understand what's working. I'm not going to build a big engineering device and the resources that takes. I just want your attention. So I'll send you a series of prime numbers, just like we're looking for with SETI, and I'll broadcast them until you come. And in the meantime, while I'm broadcasting, all your transmissions that you're relying on to look at Earth and monitor us are being screwed around with by this prime pattern being broadcast from a place in Australia. So that should get their attention, because the moon's a reflector as well. So for 12 hours, it'll be nice and strong. For the next 12 hours, it's going to be still there, but weaker, then stronger, then weaker. So it's going to have a built-in oscillation that says it's definitely coming from the planet. We know which side of the planet it's coming from, within reason, which hemisphere, because Australia is pretty unique. It's only Australia, South America. As far as the southern hemisphere goes, a bit of Africa. So it narrows it down to 3 continents. So from there, they can just, whoever they want to get here, they get here, and then they just narrow down the meeting. So that's my lazy man's approach while I'm working to stirring things along, and we'll see what happens then. Because if you get all scripture and religious wise, you look at Revelations, it says we're looking for someone who is worthy. All the angels were weeping because no one could be found that was worthy. And then they went, oh, behold, we found someone who was worthy, could open the 7 seals. 7 to me refers to 7 colors. Mm-hmm. And then there's the whole Revelation passages, which go about bringing a day of reckoning, and then drying everyone's tears and restoring life, and milk and honey and all the rest, 1,000 years of peace. So if you're an advanced alien, then you know how life evolves, and it has to evolve based on carbon and the periodic table, like I understand it now. You know it's going to evolve. You can stir it along certain ways to create intelligence and curiosity. And over time, they either, just like a garden, they either wither and die, or the species will grow and flourish. But there will come a time where they'll develop technologies, and if they don't destroy themselves, they will discover all this stuff. This is all inherent. This is easily findable. Just like being kicked out of the Garden of Eden. If you want to know the tree of knowledge and you want to eat from it, you want to understand how all this works, go for it. Go out into the wide world and figure it all out yourself. I'm not going to tell you everything. I'm your God, your creator. You go figure it out if you're clever enough. Show us that you're worthy. So here we are, 50,000 years later, still banging away, disagreeing with each other. And we now have an opportunity where, for a moment in time, we have technology, we have understanding, we have science, we have tetronics. We can get their attention and see what happens. I'm sure they've got plans greater than we ever imagined for us. We've just got to show that we're a thinking, understanding creature worthy of saving. We're not just a weed in the garden of the universe. Until then, they'll have no interest in us. They don't care if we've got radio signals that are transverse. doesn't mean much. That's technology, but we're just heating the planet up using our radio signals. We're squandering the resources of the planet gives us to burn fuel, then dumping the waste back into the ocean and the land, polluting our skies and the air we breathe. That's not really a smart ape by any stretch of the imagination. The smart ape is the one that says, no, we can take that waste, we can put it through a device like this, we can convert it back into light and heat, just like stars do, and we can use that light and heat to drive our devices, to power our homes, to keep us warm. And what's more, probably in another 50 years, using tetronics, we can use that same light, excess light and heat, to build anything we want, including oil. We can make our own synthetic oil, which is as good as the real stuff. We can make excess amounts of carbon and hydrogen, bond them all together, pump out all the oil, fill up the reservoirs again, make all the plastic stuff we want, because we'll put them back into these devices as metal, as waste, and we'll smelt them back down into raw energy. And we'll use that raw energy for something else. We've got a closed circle environment where we can enhance the planet, we can get rid of all this waste, and we can move forward as a species, doing whatever. We can run our air conditioners all day long. We can all have electric vehicles, electric trucks. Our watches will never go flat. Our phones will never go flat. You can walk around the planet with access to free energy day and night. And each continent will just have one of these little globes pumping out, which is a mini star, sucking in whatever we want to dump into it. The most logical thing to throw first into it would be radioactive waste, because this is the highest, most energy dense form of matter that we have. So it will give out more energy than anything else. So we run the first devices off radioactive waste to get rid of all the nuclear weapons and nuclear power plant wastes. Get rid of all that, put in any polluted waters, put out fresh water, restore the environment, make it back into a habitable planet. And anything that we produce in the way of waste, we don't have to put into landfill. We can put it into these devices and create more energy. And then think about what we want to do with all this energy. Instead of heating up the pot that we're living on, like little frogs, we can turn the environment back into a Garden of Eden around the entire planet. We can make the deserts bloom. We can produce all the nitrogen and organic compounds we want to turn desert back into arable soil. So all the land on Earth can be used for farming or for living. We won't have a limit on Earth. Then we can start to think about, do we want to set sail in spaceships to Mars or other planets? Or do we just want to plug into that telecommunications network and play Avatar? Virtual reality. Swap bodies with some other alien on a planet, somewhere else in 100 light years away that's on a habitable planet, and exchange, let us telepresence what living on their planet's like compared to ours. These things will all come, but we're just taking baby steps at the moment. We're learning what we can do with a triangle of energy. This is like Flintstone stuff. We're finally striking the rock to get the spark going. So we're right at the cutting edge, my friend, where the depth of technologies that are going to spring forth from this is huge. And the changes we're going to introduce are profound. But we've just got to go through the painful growing stages of letting this information permeate into our primitive little brains. When we do, and we can wrap your heads around, like I'm still discovering stuff, and I thought I knew tetronics pretty well. And it's still spewing out patterns and things I hadn't even considered. So
I mean, I had just even I had the most ridiculous epiphany about something so simple the other day. Just the same way that c squared is the circle, basically going bidirectionally. Why wouldn't momentum squared represent light? So what it makes perfect, like I just connected the dot of why p squared equals energy.
Yeah.
It's like it's sitting. It's all.
You know, the square root is linear momentum. So if you square a square root, you get the scalar energy. You get the triangle. Yeah.
I mean, just stupid stuff like that. And I try to
That's how it
tell
works out.
and I try to tell people this all the time. Like literally, if I like set aside an hour of time or more to look at your work, I'm absolutely going to make a connection that I hadn't seen before. I've been doing this for 10 years and I probably still haven't read every single page of your work because you kind of know how I am. Like, I just want to get that foundation. I don't want to jump ahead too fast. I know it's out there and I know somebody else will be able to put those pieces. I can't, as a unified theory, you can't learn it all. You just got to find that part that's going to draw to you.
And that's literally how tetraionics came about. What your reading came about. It was just, I started with the triangles and said, what do I build? And I went, that looks nothing like a proton. That looks nothing like an electron. But hang on, that electron looks like a rotor. Okay, and inductive circuits, yeah, okay. How do I force energy to spin one way or the other? Well, you don't have to. You just let it spin whichever way it goes. You view it from opposite sides. And got stuck on chemistry, as I think I've told you, for 2 years. I went, did electrodynamics, and then skipped to cosmology and solved gravity, and came back and said, well, it's all good solving gravity, but if I can't build an atomic nucleus, this whole theory is trash. It can't work. I've got to be able to solve it. 2 years it took. And in the end, the answer, when you say it to people, they just go, oh, yeah. But it's in there in the math. It's in Schrodinger equations, the energy levels of deuterium atoms and all the rest. And yet I was stuck on this model of excess neutrons. And I was stuck and stuck and stuck. Hence the picture of the chemistry for version 3. It's got the ball model with the excess neutrons in the background and the protons. And I'm sitting there going, I can't make the neutrons stick to neutrons. It won't work. And I tried everything I could think of. I'm thinking I'm missing spots where they're combined. Like maybe they stick off the side. No, they'll just, residual strong force, they'll just fly off. And I'm going, they'd be just a hydrogen bomb. I went through everything for 2 years. And then one day I remember sitting there going, what am I missing? Back to the models, looking at the models. What am I missing? Deuterium. I know I can stick deuterium together like batteries. Oh, you idiot. What if the second battery makes sense? Two 1.5 volt batteries, you're putting together, you get 3 volts. You don't have 1.5 volts. You idiot. This is basic 101. Like every child knows that. 2 batteries to make the torch work. Idiot, you can't use one. Can't use 2 side by side. They're going to be one after the other in series. Forgot all about that. And suddenly I went, the second one will be treated as a higher energy. Schrodinger's numbers, Bohr's energy levels. Oh, I'll use deuterium atoms. Went bang, 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 built the first model, and I went, holy crap. And then chemistry was born, and then biology. And chemistry, biology became the biggest book. It's double the size of all the other books. And chemistry, I hated at school, along with math, but I hated chemistry. I mean, like, nothing excited me about chemistry much. And I didn't think I'd have to do much chemistry stuff. But it became the biggest book. It's got the most information because every single element is engineeringly modeled for all 120. And I explain why there's only 120 possible elements and why smashing lead together isn't going to solve how many periodic elements it is. It's just naming compounds, elements for the sake of it. So I picked the 2 top ones and named them after myself, just to say, there you go, I beat you.
I'm glad you did. I'm glad you did that. I'm glad. I was happy to see Abraham's series on that version 3 as opposed to unnamed. So kudos. You deserve. You deserve
I resisted it. I resisted it for a long time. It's sort of, to me, it sounded a bit grandiose, naming something after myself. And I went, nah. Okay, they've had 5, 6 years of these books, 8 years. Time for me to just claim something. So I claimed that. Stuck it. There's the model. It can never be changed. It's there. First one to properly discover the elements that are there. They're up to 118, I think, now. So I've got the last 2 named. But the point is, all of these books, all 2,500 pages, just everything was me sitting down, just like yourself, going, if this is true, what about that? And what does the square root tell me? What happens if you square a square root? You get a hole. What's the hole? Well, that'd be, oh, it's 3 high, 9 across. That's just a scalar. Yeah, okay. Okay, so Leibniz described scalar energy, vis-a-vis. Newton describes linear force, the square root of that, E equals mv squared, in Leibniz's term. P equals mv in Newton's term. No, or square that, you get that. Take the square root of that, you get that. There's your picture. It's always been there. And so I drew an illustration about it. And then from that, other illustrations come. And then you read something in science, you'd be looking at some text about something or other, and they'd be explaining something. They go, well, that doesn't gel. What's going on here? Next thing, there'd be another illustration or 2 or 5 or 10. And it just flows out. You draw, connect Fermi to spectral line. I did spectral lines almost immediately because I knew they were squared number transitions in the scalar energy. I said, well, each boson's got to be a light, but light is photons, and went through the whole struggle. When I did them, I then could connect Fermi to the spectral line transitions and his differentials. And I said, oh, I've got a whole differential system here. Oh, I never thought of it as differentials. Never thought of odd numbers summing to square numbers. And the difference of any 2 squared numbers being either an odd number or a series of odd numbers.
Or prime numbers being difference of 2 consecutive square numbers. We got 1 minute and 22 seconds left. Would you please play that video one more time? Would you please play that video one more time, and then we're done?
Yeah, I like the connection. You took the words out of my mouth when you stepped into prime numbers. It all relates. It all relates. The math is there. All we've done is given form to the math, a geometric form. And that form then gets rid of all the stuff that's wrong in modern science, all the wrong teachings, because you can't change the equilateral triangle.
Hit play on that video one more time for me.
One more time.
Hurry up. We're running out. Yeah, just get it. Yeah, we're going to get it. And I'm going to sign off, sir. Thank you for so much for your time, for making it happen so quick, for, such short order. I'm going to do everything. Sunday night's going to be awesome. We'll get this set up. Everybody, Kelvin Abraham, we're not joking around, guys. We got some things to share with the world. And I thank you. I thank you for everything.
Likewise. Collaborative effort worldwide.
Absolutely. We'll see you next time.
Well done.